Now, a ruptured femur, is that what you call it? A ruptured?
Yeah, well, it's split in two.
It's split in two. Now, I've been told that when you break your femur, you're critically injured. I mean, that's a very serious injury, right?
Right.
And here you are, a skateboarder. We'll talk about that in a minute. But first of all, the crash itself, did you have any warning?
Seconds before, 10 seconds before, I'd say.
Were you just taking off when this happened?
No. Actually, I was flying with a very good friend of mine, Jonsson, who had come from Iceland and had his pilot license. And we were flying towards Squamish. And in one of the valleys that we were flying in, there were some clouds in the distance. And you know, when you're flying in a small Cessna plane, you know, it's quite unsafe to be going through clouds in a valley because, you know, your vision is very, you know, blocked and you can't see what's coming. So Guilherme made the decision to turn around in the valley, and we decided to go into a neighboring valley. And I'd say the only real warning that I sort of had was this unease in his kind of spirit. You know, I really felt, an unease. And I'd spent 3 months with Guilherme. That's how long his stay was here in Canada. And, you know, when you spend a lot of time with somebody, you know, you get to know just, I guess, their mannerisms and yeah, like before I knew it, he was saying we're going down, and there was sort of a tremor in the plane. And that's when I pretty much closed my eyes and hoped for the best. I remember the plane beginning to sort of swoop down, and that's when I just braced for impact, and impact came.
Did you lose consciousness?
I did, yeah.
Yeah. When you came to, did you realize what had happened, or were you a little bit spaced out?
Well, my very good friend Elliot and his girlfriend Leah were also in the plane. And you know, my first memory of waking up was Elliot there beside me. And the very first thing I said to Elliot was my seatbelt. You know, my seatbelt, get my seatbelt off. Because what had happened was the plane was at almost like a 90-degree angle. And Leah was behind me, and her weight would have, you know, been on my chest because I was hanging in my seatbelt. And, you know, she was, you know, wanted to get out of there. She was, you know, it was life or death. She was covered in diesel, and obviously she's kind of trampling on me, and I don't blame her. She's, you know, it's chaos, you know, so she was trying to get out. And so what that was doing was it was putting a lot of pressure on my internal organs, and I actually suffered some internal bleeding. And so my very first words to Elliot were, you know, get my seatbelt off. And I guess subconsciously, you know, even though I was knocked out, I knew that the first thing that needed to take place was this pressure had to be relieved.
Yeah. And did you know right away that you'd severely damaged your leg?
No.
So you tried to walk?
No, what happened was, so, you know, after just, I guess, 2 minutes of trying to get my seatbelt off because it was sort of lodged, I finally got it off, and seeing that Guilherme had passed away.
You could tell?
Elliot at the time said, Dave, let's just get out of here. Guilherme is breathing, he's going to be okay, you know. But it definitely didn't look very promising. And so I said, okay, let's go. And then Elliot said, Dave, look at your leg, man. And so what had happened was, when I was bracing for impact, stretching out my legs, the seat had dislodged, and it actually snapped my femur. And what I was looking at was almost like a second knee joint. What had happened was my leg had folded underneath my seat, and to my horror, my leg was actually, you know, folded underneath the seat with my body weight on it. But Elliot, you know, he was unhurt, which was a miracle, complete miracle. And he pushed the seat up, and I was able to dislodge my leg, which was, you know, a tremendous amount of pain there. And then Elliot said, you know, get on my shoulders, Dave. And Elliot carried me, man. It was tremendous what Elliot did on that day. He put me on his shoulders, and me and Elliot used to work out, you know, back in those high school days when you're trying to, I guess, get all buff and impress the ladies. And And I remember getting on his shoulders and him slipping because we had kind of crashed beside a creek and there was slippery rocks everywhere. And with me on his back, he was struggling, you know. And I was kind of yelling at him, you know, come on, man, you can do this. You know, I used to see you working out. I used to bench press 140 pounds, kind of encouraging him, you know. And so we, on our way to go see go to where Leah was, we actually sort of slipped. And at that time, I actually tried to stand on my leg, tried to brace myself, and the leg just kind of noodled. And finally, when we were able to sit, in a safe distance away from the plane, I guess that's kind of when the surrealness, the impact really came in.
Yeah. You were airlifted out of there.
We were hours later.
How did they find you?
Well, all planes give off a signal.
Right.
Cessna planes, because the battery isn't as big as commercial airliners, gives off a signal. I think it's somewhere in between 15 and 20 minutes. Every 15, 20 minutes, it just sends a signal of its location. The reason why I guess it takes so long in between is because, you know, if you're very, very far away, they'd rather have the signal for a long period of time, right, every 20 minutes, rather than if it were to go every 5 minutes, you know, the battery would only last so long. And so they saw our signal, and but for whatever reason, they didn't call search and rescue until about 6 p.m. that day, and I'm not sure why, but and so it did take around 5 hours there.
5 hours with this serious injury. You're bleeding. Your leg is shattered. Did you go into shock?
I did, yeah. Actually, just talking to Elliot the other day, we were talking about, you know, the plane crash, and he told me how he was kind of just saying, yeah, I remember when we moved from that embankment to underneath the tree because it was beginning to rain. And I don't really remember that very well. And that must have been because I was in such a state of shock and in such a, I guess such a state of just, you know, I was lost. I was, it was a moment of terror, you know.
What impact did this have on your life? This is more than a physical event.
Yeah. It had a tremendous spiritual impact in my life, for sure. You know, before the plane crash, I was, you know, I've always had faith. You know, I grew up in a family which, you know, was very Christ-centered. But I guess I didn't allow this faith to impact my words, my actions. After high school, I started working construction and wasn't really doing a lot with my life. I guess just partying and doing that sort of thing, and I guess trying to fulfill that need in my life just by, I guess what the world kind of indicates is filling that need, drinking and trying to, you know, accumulate money for no reason. And so that was my ambition before the plane crash. I wasn't really living for Christ in any sort of manner. Although I did, in a sense, know that Jesus was God and that He died on the cross for me, and all of those truths were very real to me. But you know, in that moment of darkness, there was you know, there's a ray of light, and that ray of light was Christ. You know, and so my mom, who lived in Iceland, she came to Canada to, I guess, take care of me. You know, she got the phone call that, you know, her son was in a plane crash, and so she came over, and she's a very godly woman, a wonderful woman. And so she, in the hospital, encouraged me very much that I should take this moment of tragedy and allow God to work in me, you know. And so she suggested going to Bible college. And at the time I thought, you know, like, I wasn't thinking at all about Bible college, at all. And but I sort of, I guess for her sake, I looked into it after getting out of the hospital. And I applied just thinking that I would take like a 1-year program, just to kind of twiddle around, not really thinking, you know, I would take this any further. And now I'm 3 years into my BA in pastoral leadership, and I've got 1 more year to finish. And I'll tell you, it's been a tremendous 3 years.
And you're also, even while a student, you're also pastoring 40 young people or so?
Yeah.
You know, in a local church?
Part-time youth pastor and doing escape ministry as well.
Now, this is an interesting transition from your leg being folded behind your back, femur shattered, to being not only a skateboarder but also heading up a kind of a skateboard ministry. We've got a little footage here. Why don't you tell us what we're looking at here?
Sure. Yeah, so this is actually some footage just before the plane crash, Iceland. And actually, Guðni, I remember he filmed this segment here. And it's actually from a video that was published in Iceland and sold in skate stores. And that's the indoor park that I worked at. And that right there is a clip from a skate park called the Barracks, which is a world-renowned park in LA. And this is footage after the plane crash. And as you can see, I'm not jumping downstairs anymore. Just more, you know, playing around on the boxes and the small stuff. But you know what? It's all about just having fun. You know?
And you're reaching out to a lot of young guys who, and gals too, I'm sure, who are into skateboarding.
Yeah, it's, you know, God, when He, it's so cool when you invite Christ into your life. He doesn't just take one part of your life. He takes every part. You know, and I kind of just, I guess I had figured that if I was going to give my life over to Christ, there was no, like, skateboarding is not spiritual. It's not, right? And so I never assumed that anything would really become of that. And before I knew it, I was realizing that skateboarding, as you know, lots of sports, is a tool to share life with people, you know, and to build relationships. And my hope is to, when I share life with people, is to share my faith with them and the hope that I have in Christ. And it's been such an awesome journey in the past 2 years of how God has, you know, what we're faithful with in a little thing, you know, He'll increase that. And so what started out as just me and my friend Jordan Smale with 5 guys, you know, we soon, you know, just started having barbecues at skate parks. And before we knew it, there was, you know, 30, 40 guys that we're sort of in contact with, and then there's like hundreds of guys who really, you know, are at the park, see us barbecuing, and they'll ask us like, you know, why are you guys doing this, you know, and we'll just say because we love Christ and we just want to share that love with you, and even the bikers at the park, you know, there's kind of this controversy because bikes are, you know, bigger things and BMX bikes, you know, and rollerbladers, sometimes skaters, you know, because it's a skate park, they'll kind of have their chin up and, you know, they'll kind of say, why are you here? You know, like go somewhere else, you know. And just like a few months ago, we had some leftover hot dogs in the barbecue. And I said to Jordan, I said, hey, Jordan, should we give the bikers some hot dogs? And he said, well, they're kind of like the Samaritans, aren't they? You know? You know, and Jesus loved the Samaritans, and we should love them too, you know. And so even the bikers, you know, we'll just give them some hot dogs. And
you're kind of like Tony Hawk with the Bible. You had a scripture you wanted to share with us.
Well, yeah, I actually just reading this last night. Psalm 40, verse 1 to 3. I was just reading this, and it really demonstrates exactly my prayer at the time of the plane crash and the weeks following. I believe this is David here writing this. He says, I waited patiently for the Lord. He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the slimy pit, out of the mud and mire. He set my feet on a rock and gave me a firm place to stand. He put a new song in my mouth, a hymn of praise to God. Many will see and revere and put their trust in the Lord.
Good word. Dave, thanks for coming our way. Great story.
Hey, thank you so much.
I'm very impressed with the skateboard footage. More impressed that you walked away, you were carried away alive from that plane crash. All the best, and getting married in 2 weeks.
I'm getting married in 2 weeks to the most beautiful bride ever. She's
I'm
wonderful.
sure. Marissa?
Marisa Benico.
Marisa.
Yeah, soon to be Marisa Jonsson.
Well, that, yeah, she's obviously not Icelandic.
No, she isn't.
Well, there you go. Are you going to teach her Icelandic?
Actually, she knows how to count to 10. She knows how to say I love you.
There you go. Good man. Thanks for coming our way.
Thank you so much.